Hello. I have no idea what we're doing here, but it's Vincent, Nick Rowland. If you are Australian, then a happy new year, but spoiler alert, don't tell us what's going on. And we're here. It is technically the third episode of Two Dudes, One Pint. And Nick, we guarantee that it has been no more than 2 weeks since we last did an episode of this.
Easily 2 weeks. No one can say any different either.
Yeah, and in that time, I mean, the last time we talked apparently was during the Japanese Grand Prix, which, as we know, took place exactly 2 weeks ago today. Since then, the entire NFL season's been condensed. They've been playing football, literally. You know, they'll finish a game, fly transatlantic, play another one immediately, like 2 hours later. But here we are, it's New Year's Eve, it's the final day of the year. Just by the way, we've got in the background, this is one of my favourite commentaries of the year. This is what is a moderately crazy skip barber race that took place at Sonoma Raceway for the Club UK and Ireland Skip Barber Championship, which I've been doing since July, something like that. I don't know, who cares? But yeah, Nick, it's the end, officially, of motorsports in 2014, but 2015, we've got a lot going on. In motorsport, we've got a new era in F1, and this is probably the biggest shake-up we have had in many a year. Then in the world of the NFL, it's playoff times. We've got teams, 12 of them, trying to get themselves to Super Bowl 49. And then, of course, tomorrow we start with this whole thing that ESPN likes to call the college football playoffs that no one else seems to care about.
Yeah, that playoff system, it seems to be every single bowl possible and put it on TV, apparently.
Well, yeah. I'll explain to you the complicatedness of the bowl system at some point, because of course on our last episode I broke down the ease at which college football works overall. But should we start in motorsport?
Be rude not to, seeing as that one is completely over with, and obviously we've just come to the regular season in the NFL, so I think motorsport is a great place to start.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we start with good news with Jules Bianchi. It looks so that he is on a positive road to recovery, which we have to say is a pretty good thing.
It seems so. There was a bit about the neurological damage, but his rehabilitation has started, so what rehabilitation that will be and how long it'll take, nevertheless, that is a positive and a good thing. So, all the best to him, and fingers crossed that things do improve for him. But also, of course, the news of Michael Schumacher.
Yes, and the thing is, I think we can tie the two together here, because one of the potential issues in any case of a driver is that too much information gets out, and it's always conflicting information. And actually, what a driver and a family really need is to get down and, do what they need to do, rehabilitate, and not worry about what the press is saying every 14.2 seconds. But Schumacher, there's different reports that's been coming out. Some people saying that he's conscious and able to blink, other people saying, well, actually, no, that's not the case. And it's moderately confusing what's come out of Germany recently.
Very confusing. I also saw a report this morning where it said to the effect of Schumacher could hear his family speaking, and then was crying because of it. So, I mean, I don't really know how you can read into that one. Is that a case that you can hear them but can't say anything? Or can't simply react to them? But yeah, a lot of mixed messages coming out from Germany at the moment, and not really anything sort of conclusive. Even though many journalists seemingly want to put some conclusion on it, I guess we're still at the point of just not knowing.
And this is one of the really sad and annoying things, I think, for me. And you can tie this into a lot of events that's been going on in the world over the last 6 months. The media, they do like to hype things up. The reason why, of course, is because the media sells newspapers and magazines. If they've not got something interesting and worthwhile to come up with, then they can't sell magazines and newspapers. So sometimes the whole idea, I call it the Daily Mail tactics, the shot tactics coming into play. People just thinking, okay, we'll just do this or the other, just to make it seem as though something's happening. But I think a lot of times people forget the impact that this would have on Karina and all of her family, and of course in the case of Jules, their family as well, because there's a very long process, a physical and mental process that these people have to deal with.
Yes, and that is not just physically and mentally taxing on the actual person that's suffered those injuries, but on the families as well. And to try and deal with press, media, intrusive people trying to get within the understanding of what is going on with Schumacher and Bianchi, then I think it's just got to the point where you simply got to say, leave them alone, let them get on with it, and when they know something, it's their right and decision to inform us of what is wrong. Yes, both drivers have many fans around the world, and yes, of course, we're all rooting and supporting for them, but there is a line that needs to be drawn at some point.
Well, they are the ongoing stories, but I do have to say, of course, best of luck for 2015 to both yours and also to Michael, because we as a community, I think we will always root for you. As far as F1 goes, I talk about how 2015 is a new era in Formula 1. In many ways, it really is. Sebastian Vettel over to Ferrari, Fernando Alonso over to McLaren, Daniel Ricciardo taking the number one role really at Red Bull for next season. It is, I think, a sweeping change, the likes of what we don't generally get to see in F1. For example, Alonso going back to McLaren. Very few people would have thought that. I remember the first time we did a podcast, actually, I said, actually, it was going to be a straight switch. Many people thought that you'd see Alonso in Red Bull colours. He's gone back to McLaren, back to Ron Dennis of all people. But then Vettel finally leaving his childhood home, in many ways the same way that Michael Schumacher did after being on Benetton. And at the same time, you've got yourself still this Mercedes lockout out front. So 2015 is going to be a highly entertaining season with so much going on. That's even before we get to the actual teams themselves.
Yeah, 2015 could be a very strange situation, because not only do we have those driver changes, many engines have switched as well for certain teams. We're going to see a whole new power struggle, if you like, from the engine side, which I think will be very interesting to see.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, give us 30 seconds. As you know, technology, it is an absolute beauty. It's all these people in Australia who are currently celebrating New Year's. We'll be back after a message about NASCAR.
The NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series, powered by iRacing.com, has officially begun. It's all in control of Brad Davies in that 11 machine. Green flag flies. He's damn near banged up though. Now the 93 is going to push the 4 of Brian Day all the way up the wall. 4 wide down the super stretch point in the turn. And now the 93-39, the 3 machine goes around. Big trouble in the back. The race for the win up front.
Look behind him. They're 3 and 4 wide, trying to make a push to the front as the field gains speed in turn number 1. Kenny Humphrey, if he can rip it back to the start-finish line, will win here at Daytona.
7 laps to go.
Oh,
As you love it,
here we go.
you love it. The 1 gets around, the 5 gets around. Big choke.
we apologise for that one. It's called live internet. What are you going to do? But yeah, teams and drivers, Nick. To continue on our conversation about F1, the drivers is one very big component. But the teams, I mean, it's a shake-up in itself as well. I think, of course, the one that everyone is looking at is that Honda engine that's going to be planted in the rear of McLaren next year.
Yeah, the Honda deal seems to be an interesting one in itself because from what is believed and when you read between the lines of the Honda deal, especially with Alonso, it would seem Alonso has signed a contract with Honda rather than McLaren directly. Now, obviously that is debated and not really necessarily said to be true, but it would appear that Alonso has signed for Honda to bring that Honda engine in and develop that Honda further forwards. What that has the potential of is if Honda goes somewhere else, Alonso potentially could go to another team that has the Honda engine. Now that is the general consensus and the belief to be the case, is that Alonso is signed to Honda, Button is signed to McLaren. Both on 2-year contracts. For me, that's a little bit strange, especially the Button one. Alonso I could ultimately understand. Button on a 2-year contract, okay. I mean, I guess that's maybe a bit of good faith and goodwill from Honda, and McLaren said yes, okay, we'll take it forwards. But with considering the depth that McLaren have of a driver base, and already run Magnussen for a year, that does ultimately raise a few eyebrows and a few questions. My gut feeling tells me that 2016 we will likely see Magnussen in the Force India, I have a feeling, which will then allow the progression to start to come up. Where that leaves Van Dorn exactly, I'm not entirely sure. It could be an avenue for whoever decides to take over Manor F1 as it's known as now, or potentially even Caterham, more likely to be one of those two where the drivers could be placed. But you would think somewhere along those lines that the drivers would likely go to Force India, then through to McLaren, I would have thought. But again, that might change in itself simply because the fact of Force India are still with Mercedes. So how does that then work?
Well, this brings me on to another rather interesting topic, in that 2015 is kind of in many ways, as well as it being a new era, also an interim year. Because Haas in 2016 are going to be a Ferrari team. For all intents and purposes, I am going to call Haas a Ferrari B team. Because they're going to basically have everything except for the name of the car, for all intents and purposes. So you've got Toro Rosso, who are traditional feeder team for Red Bull, and they have shown that one over the last 4 or 5 seasons now. So I think there's no doubting that in all intents and purposes, Toro Rosso is a Red Bull B team. Haas I will call a Ferrari B team, at least for the first couple of years. Then you look at the likes of McLaren and Lotus. I've got feeling that in the next couple of years, there is going to be something along the lines of what Haas has for Ferrari. This whole kind of cost budget thing continuing along the way, but also because it then gives them a natural progression. Once you're into F1, get them in a racy, kind of part fund it, and then get them moving through the ranks when the time is appropriate.
It would seem that way, and with the volume of teams currently on the grid, I am more inclined to think that we will see this sort of what I call the 5-5 split. So you've got essentially the 5 manufacturers, if you will, and then the 5 B teams. So manufacturer-wise, you'd still, even though they're a privateer, you would still take McLaren Honda because of the Honda engine. Mercedes, obviously factory and engine. Ferrari, same principle. You'd probably throw Williams into that mix as well, even though they are a customer of an engine. You would call them an outright manufacturer. And even though they made a 33 million pound loss, the majority of that in one season has already been recouped because of their phenomenal 2014. By the way, that is phenomenal if they have done that.
Yeah.
Also, they have their powers of selling their hybrid systems, such as to Audi. Whether or not that continues is a different matter, though. But they do have their flywheel system that's been sold to Audi. And, of course, finally got Red Bull. But Red Bull in itself, it depends how they decide to carry on their marketing, I guess. Even though they've gone across all types of motorsport, will they carry on in Formula 1? Gut feeling says not for much longer.
Well, I agree.
So then you've got to say who the 5 would be next down. So the B teams. Well, Mercedes B team is currently looking like it's going to turn into Force India, which is a little surprising, but because I thought they would have stuck with the McLaren side. Red Bull, Toro Rosso, Ferrari, Sauber, Haas.
Sauber's the one place that I don't know where they fit in, because they used to be a Ferrari B team.
Sauber are a bit of an enigma. So then you've got the other relationships to grow. Lotus, you would think, would, if this is the case, likely go down the route way of McLaren. But of course, they've only just signed a deal with Mercedes, which just happens to be also the cheapest engine.
Yes.
So, yeah, and yet the most powerful. And again, if it's to be believed, that Mercedes engine has just developed 50 to 60 more horsepower as well. So where does that leave Honda? Well, currently with terrible reliability. Where does that leave Renault? Wild redesign needed. And where does that leave Ferrari? Well, apparently the power engine, it's the power side and the actual combustion engine of the Ferrari is actually quite good. The Curse side of it is pretty terrible. So that's where there are improvements required.
I think that the tie-ins of other forms of series, you mentioned to Audi, I think that is a huge one. And it's one that I think has to, not will just have to continue in the next 5 to 10 years. If you think F1 long term, I think it's critical for them. The reason I say this is that Ferrari, you know, they've been talking about going back into Le Mans, Ford of course going back into Le Mans. Yes, you learn some stuff when you're in Le Mans, doing things like in a 24-hour endurance race, but the technology, they kind of separated out about 8-9 years ago. The principles of the technology is again becoming incredibly similar. Therefore, if you can run in WEC with their testing regulations, as well as simultaneously running in Formula 1, what you get yourself into is a situation where really WEC is a testing ground. A lot of people, yes, you've got Le Mans, the rest of it can almost be throwaway for them to, you know, test out new things and try and be innovative. For then the manufacturers like Ferrari to get themselves onto the world stage. And to go back to a point you just mentioned about McLaren and Mercedes, I don't think that, well, with McLaren's pedigree, I don't think they'd ever want to be seen as a B team. And secondly, I think Mercedes would probably recognise that as well, as that McLaren are almost too strong in their technical excellence. And of course, I think there's also a couple of other things contractual that must come into that somewhere along the line with McLaren's performance car department.
McLaren always like to see linking themselves as an outright manufacturer anyway, so I do agree with that one. And obviously having exclusivity on the Honda engine is going to be a massive coup for them, really. So blending those two together is huge, to how essentially it's a privateer team backed by a factory, really. Yeah. Which is exactly what any team really wants.
What Williams had back in the mid-90s.
Yes, of course they had the BMW backing. As well, they were basically backed, and of course when they tried to buy the entire team out, they were like, well, no. And of course they went to Sauber, and Sauber had a nice couple of years, but eventually that fell through as well. If they had been with Williams for a longer period of time and that BMW continued, then I would have thought Williams would have been in a much stronger shape for many, many years, where they were languishing around the back end of the field. But
that was them just paying all of the McDonald's receipts when Montoya was in there, let's be honest.
Well, they were having to pay certainly a lot off, and you know, it seems to have come round into a cycle where they can actually do something and move forwards, and they are doing so, and that's great to see.
Claire Williams is an inspiration for that team as well, I think. It's exactly what that team needs, because it stays within the family, but Claire, it's not the kind of, you know, mummy's little boy. She's got a brain, and she can take the team in her own direction, as well as trying to keep that family legacy of Williams going.
Yes, and I think that is a very strong link that they have there, and it shows when they're being interviewed and how they react to things as well. And I think it's a lovely little team. It's one of my favourite race teams of all time. I've loved Williams. I mean, I love Ferrari, but I love Williams as well, and it would always hold a soft spot in my heart. And I just think they're a fantastic racing team. For going forwards though, for next year and the prospect of what essentially will be a transitional year. I think comes down a lot down to leadership and what Bernie Ecclestone wants as well, because Ecclestone has retained his leadership which is very interesting because there was a lot of speculation that he wouldn't, but he has. And in saying that, there is a lot of talk all of a sudden about either V8 or V10 hybrids, which would obviously go away from what the WEC doing, which is looking to go to more energy efficient, lower powered. And if that is the case, then, well, to me, that is the way forward, because you've got two markets, and you would have a very split set of markets where you go for the top end with the Formula 1 cars, and then you filter down to sort of the middle to lower engines within the WEC. And it's exactly what Porsche have done. They've got an incredible engine, really, I think. And sort of Toyota, Audi seem to be not really sure what they want to do or where they want to go, but they seem pretty set on what they want to do next year, which is essentially do a final evolution of their engine and then go forwards. So for Formula 1, really, if they decide to go for V8 and V10 hybrids, well, you know, that's going to be pretty damn impressive.
And that's the
Not
one
to mention
manufacturer
also,
who's never been able... Basically, they've never been able to get into F1, who everyone would love to see.
Everyone would love to see them, yes. Not to mention also that, I don't know if... Not many people actually noticed this last year, or this season just gone. But it was only Mercedes that actually marketed their car, their Formula 1 car, as a hybrid. The F1 W05 hybrid. Yeah. They're the only ones to put hybrid on the name. And on their engine, obviously, but that was part of the team. But the chassis name was the W05 hybrid. No other car was, which I thought was quite like an interesting marketing ploy, if you like, as well.
And we have to be honest, when all is said and done, this is a marketing game as much as it is the fastest race cars in the world. As by the way, in this race, you are seeing free wide at Sonoma. That is Sebastian Job along with Stuart Adcock and Tom Ward. And this was, as I say, the craziest race I think we broadcasted on all year. So we're hopefully enjoying the super slow-mo replays of this. But you make some very good points there. And again, I remember, I think it was back in 98 or 99, some great articles about how Volkswagen were thinking, of course, Volkswagen, Audi, you know, thinking about getting into F1 with that kind of W10 engine. And a lot of people's forgotten that evolution that Volkswagen did with that W10 engine. That would be, this is my issue in that the spec, I think, is still too close in F1. And I think I can say this for pretty much all motorsports now. IndyCar had it when they started with the DW12 in 2012, surprisingly enough. But they had the single turbo and the twin turbo, and then everyone just moved to the twin because single turbo didn't work. Back in the day, you used to have V8, V10s, and Ferrari sticking with their V12 because they couldn't be bothered to do anything else because they were, you know, stuck in their ways. I think you need that innovation in different ways in F1, allowing, for example, the types of engines like the W10 or the V8 to come in and actually have a twin engine formula, which is kind of done in such a way that it's not ostentatiously balanced, but done in such a way that, you know, the two can kind of race alongside each other.
I believe in something whereby, essentially, create whatever engine you want. At some point, everyone was going to copy everyone else anyway, but you may just have a couple of seasons of an engine being particularly good. Therefore, everyone create an engine that they want run to a certain fuel burn. So, for example, they can only run to, say, 1.2 litres per lap, or 1.5 litres per lap. That is all they are allowed to burn per lap. Okay, but then they can basically, to achieve that, they can make whatever engine they want, do whatever they want, but they have to meet that fuel number.
It's an interesting concept. I mean, one of the things that has annoyed me about Formula 1 this year is that whole 100 kilogram thing. Of course, the controversy started at the first race of the year with Ricciardo and the whole, you know, is this the right amount of fuel that we're using, etc. malark. But in my opinion, the whole idea of using fuel, I understand that, you know, F1, like WEC, is designed to be a kind of innovator. And it is good that they are pushing forward on greener ways of racing. They're not going as completely batshit crazy as Formula E, but they're doing it in a way that actually can be translated into road cars. I mean, yes, FE does do some stuff that will translate back. I think it's just a little bit too far ahead of its time right now. You make a good point, though. 100 kilograms of fuel, what you generally had, last 20 laps of the race is like, sorry, you can't push. What's the fun in that?
Yeah, that's one of the areas that needs to be heavily looked at and developed. And I think now Eccleston's back in charge, we may actually see some interesting things coming about where he gets his way. And I do foresee at some point that we will see different engines again. I just think there's too much behind it. Every single team now, apart from Mercedes, are basically saying open up the engines. There is an engine freeze in Formula 1. There's been an engine freeze for a good few years now, and they need to get rid of that engine freeze.
Because what you can do is this all comes back down to what does Formula 1 want to achieve? Do they want to achieve monetary stability, or do they want to be the leader in, developing technologies and racing? They cannot be both. If you try and get the engine freeze stuff going on, then the racing becomes stale, and actually you're not pushing ahead, so therefore you're not keeping with your core principle of being an innovator. But if you're an innovator, naturally you're going to have more money in play.
Exactly, yes. So obviously there is that detrimental factor of how much will it cost, but everyone knows that when you go motor racing, when you go any sort of motorsport, it's expensive. It can be grassroots level. It can be the lowest of the low. It's expensive. Even
getting into a go-kart to go to Milton Keynes, getting into a go-kart for a day.
Yeah, and it is expensive. It doesn't matter what it is, it's expensive. So, people are under this delusion of, it's too expensive to go motor racing. It always has been. It always has been
expensive. Since the dawn of time.
So what about all those people back in the 60s that are actually building the engines themselves and putting them in the car? You think they just were able to do it for fun? Well, most of them did, to be fair, but not the point.
They're rich people with money, essentially.
Yes. People with money were able to go racing, and that's exactly what they've done. And it's the same case now. The difference is they are no longer all privateers. Manufacturers got involved, and that's where the money obviously started to come about. A lot of teams back in the day, once again, is they simply were building their own chassis and then buying an engine off someone.
Which was the Cosworth DFV in 98% of the occasions.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't really understand how that concept works either, but I think that argument will battle on long through 2015, 16, 17, and it will just continue in motorsport because it's the way of the world, and it will continue. But in terms of 2015 and what we've got in prospects across the engines, then Renault and Ferrari have got some serious catch-up to do, and I guess no one really knows what Honda have bought yet.
Well, yeah, and of course, I've always said that Honda's potential ace-sleeve is the fact that they have had a couple of years with very similar engine regulations going down into Turn 1 at Indianapolis at 235 miles an hour. Only difference is, of course, there's no such thing as in IndyCar. There is a version of DRS, I suppose we can call it, the push to pass and the road courses. Very different ball game overall. But you talked about Bernie. Do you think this year that, the racing's not been bad? I will say F1, the racing has not been bad, but do you think that Bernie, he's always talked about the atmosphere, and I go to Indianapolis pretty much, I will go probably every year for the rest of my life. You sit down in those stands for the first time, you hear a car coming through Turn 1, the engine backfiring a little bit, and the speed and the noise of it, it makes things start to tingle. And you didn't get that in F1 this year, and he's been talking about improving the spectacle. How much do you think that means to him, and also his potential to really stay, because he's an old guy now. We've always talked about Horner being the potential next replacement, and if Red Bull do pull the plug, which I do honestly think they will do in 5 years' time, what is Bernie doing now? Is he still trying to push a product for himself, or is he laying the groundwork for someone else?
Bernie and F1 are at the point where it's gone from wheeler-dealer to corporate. And Bernie doesn't know how to be corporate. Well, not very well, at least. He knows how to do his wheeler-dealer, and that's how he got his way through Formula 1 to start with, and he's still got very much that mindset, and he still thinks it applies in this modern day. There's this whole claim that the head of Nestle, whatever it is, was going to take over Formula 1 and radicalise it and revolutionise it. It does need something. It definitely needs something, especially on the social media side, because they're just going to get trounced, and there will be issues, and
V8
You know,
destroy them as far as social media goes. Even NASCAR destroys them.
yeah, every series pretty much destroys them. I mean, WEC even destroy them in that sense because they've got their own YouTube channels and things like that. Simplicity, but fact. And I think that is one of the staggering factors, and I think that is where they need to explore and exploit as well. Bernie only sees revenue, though. That's the problem, is that Bernie only sees revenue from television, which, in essence, I understand what he's saying on a live prospect, but you are losing a raw fan base and essentially attracting a type of fan that I didn't think Formula One would ever want or want to see. And I think that is where Bernie and everyone else seem to be clashing.
Well, he made that stupid comment about a month ago over the fact that, you know, Formula One shouldn't be targeting young people. I mean, sorry, every single guy, actually I take that back, 95% of the male population at some point in their young lives will get a set of cars and race them around, you know, a racetrack in their living room. I'm not going to go down a kind of sexism, you know, what guys do, what girls do sort of thing. But it's what kids generally do, full stop. Kids from a very basic level like to see kids go fast.
It is, yeah. And to say you want to appeal to a younger generation, that's a misconception. I think what he was saying was taken out of context, because when he said that, he meant in the sense of social media. So he doesn't want to appeal to the keyboard warriors, if you like, of the younger generation, which I understand where he's coming from, but he's worded it in the wrong way. Because, you know, in the final pre-race show on Sky Sports of the Formula One season, they highlighted the fact that the British team won that competition. That young British team that won they got all like university degree entries to London University and all this as well. And so they have created an appeal to a younger generation of mechanics. So I think in that sense it's very, very good. But I think what Bernie's concerned about is the saturation of the sport. It's how the sport will become saturated. Twitter's essentially saturated life, let alone anything else.
What's a Twitter?
You can get any. Well, there you go.
Yeah, I hate Twitter for the record.
Yeah, well, I can understand that. Twitter is a complete saturation of every single marketplace going. You can log on to Twitter, type in a keyword, and you'll find all the information you need to know. It's that simple. Formula One don't have their own Twitter accounts, but every other journalist does. It's a pure saturation of market. Facebook, same principle, less information though. So I can understand the saturation side is, but at the same time, when Sky Sports start putting on hours of pre-race coverage and creating pre-season television shows with Ted and his notebook, for example, as well. I mean, I remember the days when we would come into the first race of the season after simply reading times off of teletext to find out what sort of times they've been doing around a track, and actually guessing who would win the first race.
Oh God!
Now we know. Now we know after the first test who's going to win.
I can completely confer with that one, and I remember, you know, when I was a kid, I think the '99 season was the big one for me, of course. When Irvine and Schumacher were doing pretty well in testing. I was doing the same thing. This is before, you know, it was called BBC I, their internet service, and the flow of information was so slow. You go back to, you know, now, and it's there at your fingertips immediately, not just, you know, on Twitter, but Autosport, you know, immediately there. BBC, to the second what is going on. Every single test is covered. Every single thing is covered. And for me, it used to be picking up either Autosport. I was always an F1 racing guy. For the American viewers, that's a bit like Racer. I always used to be an F1 racing guy. I didn't usually like Autosport that much. But I would have to wait a month to find out what was going on in F1. Now, it takes me 15 seconds.
And that in itself is what I think Bernie was trying to say about. Not in the other sense of, we just don't need anyone, we don't need any new fans. And I think that's where it got lost with Bernie. I believe that's what he meant. If he meant it the other way, then I think there's a larger and greater issue there, but I don't think that is the case. So it's going to be a very, very interesting season 2015, and there is a lot of prospect and scope for 2016 as well. Quite honestly, at this point in time, I can't see anything more than another Mercedes domination, but I do see Williams being closer.
Yeah.
I think Williams will be a lot closer to Mercedes. I think as long as Renault have produced something with all these engine tokens and all that malarkey, that Red Bull will be closer again as well. I think McLaren is just a complete unknown. Ferrari, well, James Allison's first full year of designing a car, there's potential, but again, you've got to wonder about the electronic side of it and if they can get their recovery systems working in the correct manner. And finally, I've just got this gut instinct Lotus are going to spring a surprise with something. I don't know why. There's a Mercedes engine in that car now. They know how to build their aero. The aero numbers at the start of last season were apparently absolutely incredible, but it's just a bad engine. I don't know. There is something with that Enstone team that I think that may see Grosjean come back towards the front.
And I'll make my final point actually before we move on Lotus, because I need to go back a couple of seasons to Kimi Räikkönen. Not only has that car traditionally been very good aero-wise, but a subsequent thing of that, it was incredibly good on the tyres. How many times did we see Kimi Räikkönen go forever and a day on the soft compound and the hard compound in a way that no other team could do? Yes, some of that would come down to the Iceman himself, but part of it does have to come down to the fact that those guys, as you say, they are very good in the wind tunnel. And like a lot of teams, and I always say this, like a lot of teams, it's just sometimes that power engine underneath it. In my opinion, back in the late 90s, Minardi had the best car in F1. They just had the worst engine.
Do you know, that's been true of many things as well, and many times, you know, it's incredible how these cars are actually designed and then just have a bad engine in the back of them, because there have been times where you've seen cars on track and you think that is going quick, but of course then it puts its foot down and you're like, oh, that's just disappointing with the engine. Mike Gascoigne revolutionised so many teams, but just had a bad engine in the car at a time that didn't actually show it. And now he's off designing road cars for Caterham and trying to do things with some boats, the same as Adrian Newey is. So you've got two designers that are very, very talented that have said, I've had enough of this now, it's all about the engine. It's true, it's gone back to being about the engines again.
It really has. So basically, 2018, we're going to be watching Formula 1, Mike Gascoigne versus Adrian Newey in boats. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll step aside for just one moment. We'll be back with more fun after this.
The NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series powered by iRacing.com has officially begun. It's all in control of Brad Davies in that 11 machine. Green flag flies. He's damn near banged up though. Now the 93 is going to push the 4 of Brian Day all the way up the wall. 4 wide down the super stretch point in the turn. And now the 93, 39, the 3 machine goes around. Big trouble in the back. It's been a race for the win up front.
Look behind him. They're 3 and 4 wide, trying to make a push to the front as the field gains speed in turn number 1. Kenny Humphrey, if he can rip it back to the start finish line, will win here at Daytona.
7 laps to go.
Oh,
As the 11,
here we go.
The 11, the 1 gets around, the 5 gets around. Big jump.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We've finished talking about motorsports because you're probably all bored of it by now. We're going to instead talk a little about football because, well, a couple of things to talk about, really. Well, many things to talk about, Nick. Playoffs set in stone. Black Monday happened. College football playoffs started. The bowl season, which you have no idea what it is kicking into gear. But there's only really about 6 weeks worth of football left. Less than that.
Less than that, and it's just disappeared very fast. And I mean, I linked you to an article the other day about how disappointing this season has overall been, and it's not been the greatest of seasons. It's been watchable, but that's been about it. And now we're already into the wild card and divisional rounds, and of course, college bowl tomorrow pretty much is their playoffs really.
Well, yeah, and we'll start by looking at both college football and the NFL, because I think we can do it in one broad brush this year. The NFL, it's not been a bad season. The thing is, you'll never get a bad season of the NFL, ever. I don't think it's physically possible to get a bad season in the NFL. But it's not been that great. I mean, there's been some historic moments, and everyone will talk about, Beckham's catch and the Giants, which, it was good. I will give you that one. But when my highlights when I think for the season is basically O.J. Beckham's catch, Johnny Manziel scoring on his first play at quarterback for the Browns, and then sucking for the rest of the season. There's been a lot of hype coming to this year, and I think there's been a couple of reasons why, because the rookie class was, it wasn't bad, but they've underperformed. I think the only person in quarterback position I can talk about it has been Teddy Bridgewater. Yeah, Blake Bortles for the Jags. Getting wins for the Jaguars is an achievement for anybody. But yes, there's been some very good wide receivers this year as well. And there's been a couple of decent people on defense. But there's not really been any standout names who everyone's been kind of gluing to their TV sets. And the one time it happened, when Fox basically moved half the country to go and watch the Browns play for Johnny Football's first start, he sucked.
Yeah, I think that's been the one biggest thing for me after what seemed like a really interesting draft round, and then to see the players that have been brought in and the hype, so much hype. Again, we talk about the news and the hype around things, and there is so much hype, and I do think it affects young players' mentalities, and that has happened with the majority of them this year. Manziel being the prime example. I think it's just one of those things that's carried across throughout the entire regular season, and now we've got to the point where we're looking at a wild card round and divisional rounds that, well, was pretty much predicted.
Except for one name, and I'm not a Cowboys fan in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I agree with this.
But, I mean, I've never been a Cowboys fan. I went to see them at Wembley, yeah, whatever. Yes, they did also destroy the Colts. That has nothing to do with this at all. I just never really got the hang of it. I think that the Cowboys, as a franchise, are really a Marmite team. You either love them or you hate them. You either support them or you completely detest them. Who would have said the Cowboys would have been a Super Bowl team at the end of, at the end of preseason, really, even into the season themselves? And who would have said that the Eagles wouldn't be in the playoffs? And I think that's the biggest shock that we've had.
Eagles is the massive one for me. I think more than the Cowboys, because the Eagles were playing so well, and they've not made it, which is just incredible. But the Cowboys to get in, who knew actually Tony Romo could throw a football?
In the fourth quarter after a 2-minute drill. 2-minute warning even.
Yeah. I mean that's one thing that must have shocked pretty much, everyone, that Tony Romo, existed after, half time.
Well, my joke coming into the season and through the draft is that I was surprised that the Cowboys didn't draft Johnny Manziel just to play in the final 2 minutes of the fourth quarter. Because, I mean, yes, Romo has had some amazing, 2 minutes drill performances in the fourth quarter, but at the same time, the amount of times he's thrown interceptions, he's got a reputation for a reason. But I think that he has matured as a quarterback, and I can actually honestly now say Tony Romo is one of the best quarterbacks in the league this year. Simple as that. I think that, I mean, the team that I feel really bad for still is the Cardinals, because, you know, they could have made history. Had their quarterback not have been injured, they probably would have made history.
I agree with that massively. I think the Cardinals would have made history. Can we just talk for just a moment, though, on how a team with a 7-8-1 record, Panthers, are in the wildcard round? Because,
it is the stupidest... Yeah, I mean, I think it's the first time ever that a team with a losing record is into the playoffs.
It must be. I was actually trying to see if I could find any sort of record of it, and I've not been able to discover it yet. Please, Wikipedia, give me something.
Well,
but
yeah, I mean, yes, they're 7-8-1, aren't they?
8-1 record, and they're going to go up against the Cardinals. I mean, in theory, the Cardinals should destroy them, but the Panthers may be like, hey, we made the wildcard round. Let's go and do something.
And Cam Newton can be dangerous, let's be fair. He can be dangerous. I do kind of chuckle a little bit, because it's the first time ever that ESPN get a playoff game, and they have to settle with an injured Cardinals versus a losing team, a losing record team. Sorry, ESPN, I think you might have got screwed over on that one just a little bit. But
I mean, talk about a pie in the face. That's it.
It really is. But it is on 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. So basically, we're going to spend 3 hours on John Gruden trying to make that game seem interesting, even if it's a blowout. I'm surprised that he just doesn't wear like a Hooters t-shirt when they actually go to the justifying away getting around the NFL to switch to start eating chicken wings or something. But yeah, I think that, I mean, for me, the shocks, they continue in that Oakland won. I mean, who would have thought Oakland was going to win a game after some of their performances this year? I mean, when they were in London, they were abysmal. I think also to see the Bengals in the playoffs, I mean, that was a bit of an interesting one. And of course, the Ravens, it came down to the final day. I was worried. I wanted the Ravens to win. And I actually want the Ravens to win this weekend as well. First time I've seen that in a very long time, because of course, you know, the Baltimore-Indianapolis rivalry. We don't root for Baltimore. Huge. But I didn't want the Houston Texans in the playoffs, because they could have been so dangerous with JJ Watt. Also, if the Ravens win this weekend and the Colts win, I think we end up playing the Broncos. The Broncos, as a divisional game, is winnable. Playing against the Patriots in a divisional game is one of the toughest things you can do in football. It is the AFC's version of going to Lambeau.
Yeah, well, if I read this correctly, Colts would be the lowest winning seed from AFC, so they play the Patriots, and Steelers would go to the Broncos. So yeah, for the first, I think most Colts fans would want a Ravens win, very much so, because going to the Broncos, as we've seen this season, is winnable.
Yeah, especially Peyton's arm.
That is a very, very winnable game. Anyone going to the Patriots, I mean, okay, they had probably a rocky, could we say, start to the season, but since that point, they've just been dominating and decimating teams along the way. Similar vein to the Seahawks, really. And quite honestly, going there, I wouldn't prey upon anyone. So yeah, I could see why you want a Ravens win, but you would have to believe and say that the Steelers are still stronger.
They are, and Big Ben has been playing better than I've seen him in a long time. And let's not forget, this is the third time this team's meeting. I saw him on Thursday Night Football because it was, well, Thursday night. I could just remember that Thursday Night Football game, because that was when the NFL was at its most controversial, with Roger Goodell and everything going on with that one. I think that Big Ben, it's been a while. He can go all the way to the Super Bowl, but he will win or lose that game in his own head. The Ravens, I think that they're lucky to be there. And in the same way that we talk in the NFC about the Panthers, I think the Ravens could spring a surprise, because they've got nothing to lose.
No, they absolutely don't. They have absolutely nothing to lose, and they could spring a surprise, but it depends on the pressure level that the Steelers feel, and if they crumble, because the Ravens will be ready to pounce. Steelers on their best will kill the Ravens. Any sort of mishaps or uncertainty or doubt within the Steelers, and the Ravens will pounce, and they will win that game.
Oh god, yeah, and they are a very good comeback team, and they are very scary. And you make a point about the Patriots as well. I mean, a Patriots-Ravens game actually is an incredibly interesting one. Of course, everyone wants to see Big Ben versus the Patriots versus Brady. That will be amazing. The same way that we're all looking forward to Manning versus Brady. I can't even remember which one it is now, 7 or 8. And it very easily would likely happen. But I think the Ravens, they know how to play good defense against the Patriots. They know how to shut down the Patriots' running game, force Brady to throw. And Brady and Manning, I mean, they are traditionally two of the best throwers in the game. The Patriots have been very lucky they've had a running game that works to get pressure away from Brady. The Broncos don't have a running game that's that good because they rely on Peyton. They rely on Peyton doing 90% of the work. I've seen some of the super slow-mos of Peyton Manning this year, and I honestly think he has got another 13 months left in the NFL.
Maybe not even that. I wouldn't be surprised if this was it, to be honest. But maybe one more. But it's getting difficult for him, and I think if that happens, basically the Broncos need to plan a contingency plan now.
Yeah.
And work out what exactly they're going to do, and they should trade up, or also actually understand where they want to take their football club as well. What do they do? Do they go for someone that's another Manning type, where they throws the ball? They've got a team built around Manning, or do they create a hybrid? I mean, it seems this season seems to be creating these hybrid systems where half the time they seem to have a quarterback that's throwing, or they've got a running game. So, I mean, what do you do? Do you have pure running? I think Denver and that franchise, they've got to work out what they want going forwards, because they just cannot keep on relying on Manning.
And also, they can't keep on relying on their wide receivers, the same way the Colts can't rely on Reggie Wayne and T.Y. Hilton for much longer. There's just Reggie Wayne the other day, by the way. He slowed towards the end with his touchdown there, but I thought his legs were going at one point. I was thinking, really? I was very
Is this guy
worried.
done?
I was very worried, actually. And I mean, it's that whole reason. Week 17, you're in the playoffs. Why are you going for that extra W? And I think part of it is pride there for Chuck Pagano, becoming like only the second coach after Jim Harbaugh to get an 11-5 season for the first 3 years. Yes, Chuck, I love you to pieces, but I mean, you did play some dangerous stuff that game. And of course, as well, as far as that game went, keeping luck in the game for as long as they did. They claimed they didn't know about beating the Manning record, and of course, Andrew Luck did beat the Manning record for the Indianapolis Colts, which is, well, it kind of solidifies Andrew Luck for me as the quarterback that no one said he was going to be, and he's finally been able to say that he is Peyton Manning's natural successor. But he has made a lot of mistakes. Go on.
This comes back to what I was saying earlier on about the pressure of these college players coming up into the NFL in that first season. Unless they are seriously mentally focused and can just get past all the crap that goes with it, then I honestly, at this point in time in history, with social media and every other media aspect, I do not see any draft player playing particularly well in the first season. It's going to take 2 or 3 for them to settle and understand what they need to do, and to understand the pressures. Yeah, exactly. And to be able to actually progress and move forwards. Because at this point in time, I do not think you're just going to go, yeah, I want that quarterback as my first round pick, and he's going to be amazing. It won't happen.
No, it would never happen. And I think there's a secondary issue there that I think Johnny Manziel would have been okay if he was a starter. But the issue for Johnny Football was he threw his toys out the pram when he didn't become the starter on week 1 of his first game. Marcus Mariota
threw his toys out the pram and then threw a party as well.
Well, yeah, injured, drinking, medication, won't go there. But I think Marcus Mariota, I think I've not watched too much of Marcus Mariota and the Ducks because the game was always at really weird times for me. But when I have seen Mariota play, I think he's been very good. When I watched his Heisman speech, something came through in that Heisman speech to me that made me think that guy is in a very similar league to Andrew Luck. Not only is he a very good quarterback, he's got his head on his shoulders. In the same way that I don't think Teddy Bridgewater was ready for his first year, and the same way that Clowney from FSU, he won't be a starting quarterback in the NFL next year unless he has to be. And I don't think Clowney is going to be a Manning, Big Ben, or a Brady just because of his attitude. I think Mariota can be. Whoever gets him, they need to hold on to him. And that is why I'm thinking that maybe a team like Denver, who need to really get their game in gear, or, there's one or two other teams that could really do with a QB. There could be some very fascinating draft ups this year.
Yeah, Broncos, for me, are the ones that need to go for a QB, and if they do have 13 more months out of Manning, is to get him up to speed and Manning to teach him everything he knows pretty much in that time. Because I do not see the Broncos being able to do much else after Manning goes, and like I said, it's a franchise that needs to sort itself out in what it wants to do with its future, because if they don't, and they don't do it now, they are going to have some serious problems, and they could just fall backwards, and very, very quickly as well.
Yeah.
But, all right, what's your take on the NFC? Let's look at the NFC.
We haven't even looked at the Colts yet. The NFC.
Oh, sorry. Yes,
no,
of course, the Colts.
Right. Well, to be fair, I think this is going to be a very simple one. The Colts need to be careful. After you blow a team out, they will going to come back and they are going to put everything they have at you. Blowing the Bengals out, I think, was a very dangerous thing to do now. The Bengals have got a fire under them. They're not going to get any further than the divisional round. But to get retribution, I think that's what the Bengals want. And it's a game the Colts can win. It's a game that the Colts should win. And I don't think the Colts go any further than the divisional round, to be blatantly honest. And this is me as a Colts fan. If we get the Broncos, there is a chance we could end up in the championship game. If we get the Patriots, I might as well just, go and support the Patriots to win the Super Bowl. But I think that the Colts have got to be careful. They need to work with Fina very well. They need to, try and go easy on T.Y. and Reggie because, of course, they've both got niggling injuries. They did sign a new wide receiver as well the other day, which is going to be an interesting one, how he fits in. And I think, most importantly, Andrew Luck needs to be Andrew Luck in the third quarter for fourth quarters.
Can't disagree. I think that sums it up perfectly.
To go to your world now in the NFC.
Thank you. Firstly, if we are starting in my world, can I just say how shockingly disappointing the Bears have been? There is no worse thing that I've seen probably in all the time I've been a Bears fan, and for the entire basically backroom staff to be gone already, or at least with a week's worth to go before their contracts run out and they can start talking to other people, then it does not surprise me just exactly what is happening. And also to I have just actually seen on my phone here, just give me 2 seconds, Bears to reportedly interview the Seahawks defensive coordinator Dan Quinn for head coach.
Yeah, and he is one of the hottest prospects, I think, in the coaching staff for this year. He didn't do any interviews last year. The main reason for that is because he wanted the Seahawks to win the Super Bowl. This year, the Seahawks are basically throwing him away. In the nicest way possible because they know that he's head coach caliber. They want to do it on the Seahawks terms, not him, storming out. In the same way that we talk about QBs, a defensive coach in the NFC is the most important thing you can have. The reason for it, why? The NFC is generally the highest scoring conference of the two, and the type of play, I've always said, there's a different type of play. The AFC is more traditional NFL play, whereas the NFC's taken a much more hybrid college meets the NFL. I mean, again, you look, for example, very simply at the Eagles, you get what I mean. And a lot more teams in the NFC are trying to do that. I think that he would be a great head coach for whoever gets him. And he's the sort of thing that I think he wants to go and build a franchise rather than, take on a so-so franchise and then be pressured with the playoffs. I think if he goes to the Bears, he needs a 3-year deal, get that team in order, get into the playoffs within 3 years.
Yeah. Don't disagree. I think the Bears traditionally have always been very much a case of playing on defense anyway, and to have someone like him come in, I think will be massive. To take it into soccer terms for a moment, this is the best analogy I can come up with because it's something that I believe in, and it's something that a lot of modern soccer do not believe in. That you build from the back. So you build from your defence and you move forwards. There was a great saying once, I can't remember which manager it was, but they said, a centre forward win you a game, a defence will win you a championship.
Yeah.
No true words lie in the NFC. And I honestly think if you build a defence, such as the Seahawks have done, the rest will come. And if that is the case where the Seahawks defensive coordinator leaves and comes to the Bears as the head coach, I can only see that as being a positive thing. And as long as Rex Ryan is nowhere near us, I will be happy.
Yes. I can't believe that anyone would want to interview Rex Ryan, to be fair. I mean,
what do you say pre-broadcast? What was it, the 49ers and who was it? Is it Atlanta?
Atlanta, yeah. I mean, Atlanta.
Yeah, it was Atlanta, wasn't it? Yeah.
Why would Atlanta, let's not forget, they were in the playoffs 2 years ago. I mean, yes, they've had a bad season. They could have been in the playoffs in the worst division in the NFL ever. But I think that Rex Ryan, he might as well just disappear off the face of the earth. No one would want him. Game balls for everyone, because you're never going to get one from me ever again. But I think, no, Rex Ryan is a joke. I mean, I think part of that coaching thing comes back to the fact that Harbaugh went back to college football. And I said to you that, the Bears shouldn't touch him. I mean, he can...
I thought they should have done, though. I thought it would be a great way to hybrid the systems.
But he's a bit of a prick. That's the issue. And you start offending your locker room, then it's not very long until the players lose faith in you. And I think this year, from Harbaugh to Kaepernick, then down into the team, it's just been hate cycling through.
Yeah, but, you say that, but look how players attack other players, such as in the Bears, and some of what was said about Jay Cutler and that. By the way, he can go. You see, it's frustrating because I say that now about Jay Cutler, but I know how Jay Cutler can just turn on for a moment and you just think, maybe not actually, it might be worth keeping him. I do have to say though, that Emre's deal on him last season with that ridiculous contract.
Yeah.
I mean, who the hell is going to want to come and get him? I think the only team speculative about getting him would be the Bills. But would they honestly want to pay that kind of bill?
Well, true. And also, did you hear about Kyle Orton? After the season ended.
Oh, he's retired?
Yeah, he retired. He said, yeah, I'm just going for a meeting, I'll be right back, and then basically never came back.
Didn't he clear his locker room or something, or his locker, and then walk out, not do any interviews, and just disappear?
Yeah, off into the face of the earth. He's probably in some forest right now. Fishing or something. He said he's going to spend it with his family, so we've got to give him a little bit of niceties. But, I mean, if you know that you're retiring from the NFL, the last thing you're going to want is every news organisation summing up your career play by play. So fair play to him for, not wanting any additional attention, which, some people don't necessarily want. But to go back, the Bears are in big trouble. In fact, I think they are, along with Oakland, in the biggest trouble in the NFC.
They are. We've got a 7th round pick as well.
Yeah. You look to the playoffs, Lions Cowboys is a mouth-watering schedule, to be fair.
Lions Cowboys?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole way the NFC is going to play out is going to be fascinating to me. The Lions Cowboys The Lions have a pretty good defense. Let's be fair. I mean, that's a pretty good defense the Lions have got there. The Cowboys have been playing well all round. 12-4-0 records matches the Packers and the Seahawks. That's not bad going, really, is it?
No.
So that
in the toughest
will
division
be,
in the NFL as well.
In the toughest division, yeah. And for me, that is probably the game of the wild card round
By far. I mean, Cardinals-Panthers is going to be mild comedy with, it could be entertaining. It will be a very good game, potentially, with how bad the
Cardinals,
two are.
Yeah, Cardinals-Panthers isn't even college level. We're talking like high school level. This could potentially go down to at this point. Cardinals are in all sorts of injury woes, and Panthers... I have no words. How can a team with a 7-8-1 record be playing in the wild card round? Anyway, that will be comedy gold. And quite honestly, the Seahawks must just be like laughing because they all played the lowest winning seed from those games. Well, let's take Cowboys as being the highest seed, so they'll go and play the Packers. That means they're either going to play the Lions, the Cardinals, or the Panthers. Right? Well, they'll play the Cardinals or the Panthers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How can the Seahawks possibly be worried about that? They may as well already be looking at the conference championship.
Yeah.
There is no problems there for at home, and there is no problems there for the Seahawks whatsoever. No. They are going to beat the Cardinals. They are going to beat the Panthers. It does not matter what happens in this game. The only shock to happen is if the Lions beat the Cowboys and then they face the Lions, because they'll come up against a tough defense.
Well, yeah, and to go back about the point you're making about defense as well, is I want you to very quickly picture the scenario for both of the divisional games in the NFC. You're going to Lambeau or you're going to CenturyLink. It's going to be cold. It's going to be incredibly loud. You, as the opposing quarterback, has got to find enough blood in your system to get that ball into your hands. But for that, you've got to find a way of getting people to get a snap count out. This is what the playoffs is. If you get home field advantage, if you're a team like the Packers or the Seahawks, that is how important it is to you. Combine that with two of the best defenses in the league traditionally. This is the reason why, when you come to playoffs, you do not want to go to Lambeau, you do not want to go to CenturyLink. And, for example, when the Chiefs were good, you didn't want to go to Arrowhead for exactly the same reasons.
I agree, and because of those reasons, it is going to require Tony Romo to have the game of his life to get out of that divisional round. Because let's say that they're going to get out the wild card round to get out of that divisional round. But quite honestly, at the moment, the NFC to me is locked on. It will be the Seahawks against the Packers. The AFC, I still think, is a little bit more open because, as it stands currently, in my heart, I believe the AFC conference round will be Patriots-Colts.
Yes, and again, that will be a Patriots. In the same way, you don't want to have to go up to Foxborough to play a playoff game. I mean, it could snow, it could be anything. I think of the ties, even when you put it locationally, I think that, Mile High Stadium is a much easier venue to play in compared to Foxborough.
Yes, it is. Atmosphere-wise, you're probably looking at something quite similar, but it will be an easier type of stadium to play in, yeah. But I'll be honest, when you look at the divisional round teams and the people that or the teams that are in the divisional round, the only one I can say that I would be worried about of dropping out of the divisional round would be the Broncos. Depending who the Broncos come up against. If it's the Colts, I do think the Colts will beat the Broncos. Other than that, Patriots, Seahawks, Packers will all progress into the conference round. And at that point, get ready for some entertaining football.
Just there's a final point on that, and to go back to Colts, Broncos. If the Colts win, is that it for Manning?
See, I think it is. I really do think it will be it. And if he does have one more year in him, then they have to be very, very proactive in the draft rounds and with whatever transfers they decide to pull off, because they're on borrowed time.
Oh yeah. So from the NFL, okay. Very quickly then, Super Bowl lineup.
Super Bowl lineup. Well, firstly, I'm going to be in America for this, so I'm looking forward to that massively. I will be in Daytona.
Have I told you how big of a bellend you are?
Yes, many a time, thank you. Let me think. I'm going for Patriots Seahawks.
Okay. I am going to go... Of course, my heart says Colts, Packers. But my head is going to say Cowboys, Patriots.
Cowboys to get that far?
I think they're going to do it. In fact, I'm going to put some money on this at the end of this podcast.
Wow. I really did not think you'd say Cowboys. See, if Cardinals still had their team, I would have said Cardinals.
Easily. But I think that this is a momentum game as much as anything else. The Cowboys, recently have just had one of the best couple of months they could possibly have. They've gotten over their biggest hurdle, which is winning in December. The sky's the limit for them. I think that, for the Seahawks, there's a lot of pressure on them to try and go back-to-back. That will harm them. There's enough issues with Russell Wilson, apparently, in that camp at the moment. You look at the likes of other people in there. The Packers, again... Well, we forget one big, very important thing. That Aaron Rodgers is kind of injured.
Well, he did come back on, though, didn't he?
Yes, but...
He was injured, came back on, is still kind of injured.
Yes.
So, yeah, okay, I take your point on that one, in the sense of he's damaged. So, Aaron Rodgers in that sense, yeah, okay, I can see what you're saying on that one. It depends how quickly he recovers. That's me. What is why I see more of the Seahawks, because I think defensively they will be much better than what the Packers will be and try and play on their offense with an injured Rodgers. So that for me is why I say Seahawks. Cowboys, though, against the Packers, if that was to be the case, would be probably just as difficult.
Yeah.
If they've got an injured Rodgers.
And not only is it the physicalness there, it's the mentalness as well. And I think mentally, after that issue, if he even feels a twinge again, there's going to potentially be some issues. Should we go to college football before we wrap up?
I think we should.
Right, I've got to explain the bowl season to you now, haven't I?
You do.
Right, okay.
And to all of our lovely viewers.
Well, until this year, you had something called the Bowl Championship Series, which was basically what they did is they ranked the teams, carrying on ranking the teams, you'd end up with number 1 and 2, they play the national championship game. The bowl games actually used to mean something to about 4 or 5 teams. But the issue was is they never used to have to play each other. Generally, the bowl games are designed in such a way that they basically take people from certain conferences, like the SEC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, the Pac-10, the ACC, etc., and they put them into games. It will generally either be the champion, or failing that, if they're elsewhere, otherwise engaged, it will be another team from that conference who has a winning record. And that's the important thing. You have to have a winning record to be bowl eligible. So some of these bowl games are kind of shit. And you were talking about the Music Bowl yesterday, which actually did have a pretty good finish to it. But some of the bowl games are, pretty darn bad. Things like the Pinstripe Bowl, for example, or the Hawaii Bowl and the GoDaddy Bowl and all that stuff back in the day. It's not the...
Still a few of those now. Also, I've noticed there's still a few of those names knocking about. But yes, that Music Bowl one was very, very good between Notre Dame and LSU. That was like 4 seconds to go and a field goal.
Yes, and the thing is on that field goal as well is that it was such a close field goal. I think it was closer to the uprights than a PAT would be. And actually, those kicks are a lot harder than people think. Actually, once you get down to kicks that, 20, 22, 23 yards, it's actually harder to do than a PAT, because most kickers, they'll go from PAT attempt backwards as far as they can. They don't normally go forward. And standard physics, how quickly can you get a ball up, and the way you got to kick is actually slightly different. But this year we have got ourselves the college football playoffs, which basically is a method of ESPN taking more money for you. So it used to be, for example, last year you used to have 4 bowls on rotation. They used to always be the Rose Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, Cotton Bowl, and Sugar Bowl, I think, were the ones in there. And the Rose Bowl was the championship game last year, which was, of course, played by the Auburn Tigers, who were doing amazingly until the 4th quarter, losing out to FSU. But this year, you've got yourself 4 teams, ranked, and they will play 2 games. So, well, up to 2 games. So, for example, you've got Alabama, you've got Florida State, you've got Ohio State, and you've got Oregon. Not in that order. I think it's Alabama. No, it's not. Yeah, it's Alabama, Oregon. Alabama, Oregon.
No, Oregon, Florida State, Alabama, Ohio.
Yeah, sorry, I'm thinking rankings. So it's Alabama number 1. Number 2,
4.
Number 2 is
Oregon.
Yeah, so on and so forth. FSU number 3, Ohio number 4, which created some controversy because, of course, FSU's not had a losing season, not lost at all this season, but their strength of schedule has been pathetic. So essentially, what will happen is they'll play 1 game, and then the winners will go to the championship game. Simple as that, to make lots of money. You got 4 very interesting teams here. I think that arguably, the one to watch is going to be the Oregon game. In my opinion.
Yeah, the Oregon game, I think it's going to be... Oregon FSU is going to be better than Alabama, Ohio.
Yeah.
You would think Alabama are likely to go through on that one, but I think Oregon FSU is going to be a lot closer.
Yes. And in my opinion, whoever wins that game will win the playoffs. As simple as that. Just because of the fact that I'm not quite sure why, but I don't know whether Alabama's really got it together for them this year to actually go all the way and win a title. Of course, it'll be, I think, their 3rd title in 4 years or something stupid like that. So it's been an impressive run for Bama and Nick Saban. But FSU last year, as an Auburn fan, I want to say their win was a fluke. It was good hustling in the 4th quarter that won it, and Auburn making mistakes. I think that overall, you've got to think about the fact that Oregon, Marcus Mariota, Heisman Trophy winner. He's got it going for him right now. Ohio State, I mean, if they win against Alabama, they've got this flair in them. Again, I talk about momentum. They came out of it. Out of the regular season with the need to win and dominate, and they did that. They scraped into the playoffs because I think it should have been TSU really fighting with them for that final spot, and I know there's a lot of TSU fans who are very unhappy about them being unseeded. But then you think about it in the big picture, Ohio State is not a bad football team at all. Alabama is not a bad football team at all. Oregon is an amazing football team, and Florida State, yes, they've not lost, but I don't know if you've seen Florida State this year. They've done more comebacks than fucking Andrew Luck over the last 2 years.
I haven't, no.
And
I've not seen any of that. If that's the case, then Oregon are likely to win, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that is what the issue is, in my opinion, in that Florida State, they just haven't had a 4-quarter game. And I always talk about 4-quarter games. And some of their first halves have been abysmal. I mean, as bad as the Colts last year, not being able to score properly, interceptions, turnover, fumbles. Their defense isn't that good, and when you go up against an offense like Oregon, which is still living in the shadows of the Chip Kelly offense, you've got to be scared.
Well, that whoever comes, I don't know. It's the Oregon Florida one, as you say, will be the better game to watch, but with how it stands at the moment, do you still feel Alabama are likely to win overall? Because, I mean, they are seeded number 1, so you'd think they would be stronger against someone like Oregon, but
Well, yeah, and that comes back to the
tough to
seedings,
call.
of course. I mean, these are, a mixture of people, including Condoleezza Rice. Yes, I'm going to have to mention her, but the seedings only mean so much. It's what you do on the day, in my opinion. And Alabama, yes, they play in the SEC. They play in, still in my opinion, the toughest division, toughest conference in college football. Yes, they won the Iron Bowl. I think they put everything into the Iron Bowl. I don't think they have much left after that. And to play, 2 games in moderately quick succession now, it's going to be tough on them, I think. And I'm not quite sure whether they've got the stamina to go that way. I do think that Ohio State, they've got the heart. And I do think that Oregon, they've got the talent. For me, it very easily could be Oregon versus Ohio. It could very easily be Oregon and Alabama. If you are right, though, if FSU win, then Alabama will win. Simple as that. And none of my... And even if it's an Ohio State versus FSU game, I still think that Ohio State will win.
So, of the 4 teams, you would say FSU is probably the lowest likely.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the only reason, in my opinion, that they're in the playoffs
least
is
likely.
because they didn't lose a game. Simple as that. I think that a tougher challenge would have been Baylor, who are seeded number 5, TSU. I mean, even on their day, Mississippi State, Michigan State, you could go all the way down. I think a Notre Dame that played yesterday could have been incredibly good to watch in the playoffs, but they completely messed up, let's be honest. And there you are. What's your
So
pick?
on our well, for me, I've of what I've seen, I've not seen much college football. Unfortunately, I would say Oregon.
We
overall.
agree on something.
But there's obviously early in the day. There's a bigger game on though. That's the thing. Auburn against Wisconsin
Yes.
in the Outback Bowl.
Yes, the Outback Bowl. Woohoo! I believe the Outback Bowl is one of the 2 where basically the day before they feed you as much steak as you could possibly think about eating ever. So, everyone's going to be about £400, heavier per team afterwards. Just having a look through it, actually, yeah, it's one of the ones. It's sponsored by Outback Steakhouse, and I did go to a Texas Steakhouse, not an Outback. I was always told to go to an Outback Steakhouse, I never did. If you go see an Outback Steakhouse, go to one. It's apparently chuffing amazing. But yeah, it's one of the things that what they give you is a shit ton of steak, essentially, as well as, and this, let's not forget, college football athletes aren't paid, but they get prizes for appearing in bowl games as well, and some of the prizes are actually moderately entertaining.
Ah.
There we are.
Well, I think that sums motorsports and football and college football up perfectly.
Yeah.
For 2014, and in mere hours now we are down to. We will be into 2015 and previewing well,
Everything.
playoffs and the entire new motorsport season.
Yeah. Are we allowed to say Super Bowl during Super Bowl week, or will Roger Goodell come and slap me around the wrist or something?
No, I'd probably say you're being racist or something.
Yeah, who knows? I'll be fined and someone will fly a flag. Who knows? Ladies and gentlemen, that has been it then. Our final podcast of 2014. I've been Will Vincent. That guy, I've forgotten what his name is.
There's only one of me, Nick Rowland.
There we are. We'll talk to you all next time. Have yourselves a great new year. Bye!